Well, to discuss all of this, I'm joined now by the former US Special Envoy for the Sahel region and Atlantic Council Distinguished Fellow, Ambassador J Peter Pham. Thanks indeed for joining us, Ambassador, on BBC News. There are a lot of different angles and elements to this, so if we might just go through them sort of one by one. If we start with Ethiopia, Ethiopia's president has secured direct access to the sea for the landlocked country in exchange. It becomes the first country to recognise Somaliland. Is that a good deal for Ethiopia?
I think it's a wonderful deal for Ethiopia. It diversifies its bottleneck in Djibouti, where everything has to come through at very high prices. And so it's good for the Ethiopian people, and it's good to have diversity. It also opens the deal for Somaliland, as you mentioned earlier, of recognition. So I think it's a real win-win, and it respects reality. And that's the most important thing, the reality of what is on the ground in the Horn of Africa and not notional theories.
Is Somaliland in a position, though, to do what it's doing, to give away that sea access to Ethiopia and getting a stake in Ethiopian Airlines in exchange and so on?
Yes, and it's based on two things, both law. Going back to 1960, Somaliland was a former British protectorate. It gained its independence before the former Somalia Italiana, the Italian trust territory, did, and was recognized by numerous countries as an independent country. Then there was a union of the two territories, which, ironically, a Somali court itself ruled invalid years ago. But moving up to the present, the reality is the majority of the people living in Somaliland have never lived in Somalia. They don't consider it, and there's no way anyone has any idea of getting them to join. Why would they? They have direct elections. They have the last election in Somalia was before either you or I were even born. So why would these people want to be back in a failed state? And so it's never going to happen.
Talking about Somalia then, they do view this, though, as a breach of their territorial sovereignty.
Yeah. But aside from the legal claims, which I think are very tenuous, the fact is they have no means of enforcing. It's been more than 3 decades since Somalia has exercised any authority whatsoever in Somaliland. And others have invested. In fact, the British International Investment, BI, has invested close to $1 billion over several years in the second phase of the port at Berbera, which will be the port where this trade coming through to Ethiopia will go through. So, and they're in partnership with Dubai Ports World. So it's the international community is moving slowly to recognizing this reality.
There are concerns, though, that this deal could destabilize the region. Do you share that view?
I don't, because I don't think it could be more destabilized. We have in Mogadishu a failed state with members, including a minister in the cabinet who was a former wanted person on the U.S. hit list with a $5 million bounty on his head. What's happening in Mogadishu is, absent any achievement, absent any elections, they're using this as a tool to whip up support for lack of achievement. In fact, just today in Mogadishu, a respected clan elder of the Hawiye clan, a hereditary sultan, Muhammad Huli, was actually arrested and disappeared by the secret police for stating that he thought this was a good deal that one should look at.
We've seen disruption in the Red Sea shipping corridors recently with the attacks by the Houthi rebels related to what's going on north of there. Could this deal, could those concerns about any kind of conflict impact that situation? I
would flip that on its head. Actually, during all the years when there was piracy in Somalia, we talk about all those attacks, they all came from what is rumped Somalia. No piracy came out of Somaliland. Somaliland, without international recognition, kept its 500-mile coastline pirate-free. In fact, destabilizing Somaliland, not giving it a pathway to inclusion in the international community, is the surest way to get a Houthi-like instability on the other side of the Gulf of Aden.
And just briefly then, do you expect that more countries might follow Ethiopia's lead here in recognising officially Somaliland?
I think the devil will be in the details of the recognition and how it comes about. But I do think that there's been a long wait, which is the first country to recognize Somaliland. I don't think there will be a scrum, actually, who will be the second. So I think it's reality, and it will happen sooner rather than later.
Okay, well, we'll watch to see what happens next. But for now, thanks so much for coming in.